I woke up coughing, my throat raw like I'd swallowed smoke. The room was dark, but not the kind of dark you get at midnight. This was tinted orange, flickering. I threw the covers off and stumbled to the window. The horizon was on fire. Flames licked up the edge of the ridge across from our house, devouring trees like they were nothing. I could already hear the dry crackle, the furious snapping of burning wood. Somewhere out there, someone screamed. Not just fear, raw animal panic. I yanked my jeans on over my boxers, didn't even bother with shoes. I ran downstairs 2 steps at a time. Mom was shouting for Dad. Our dog Max was barking like crazy. Then Jake came crashing through the front door, wild-eyed and coughing, his hoodie half-singed. "It was an accident," he gasped, grabbing the doorframe to steady himself. I grabbed him by the front of his hoodie, dragging him inside. "What the hell did you do?" I lit a little fire to burn off the dead grass. It was supposed to be small." His voice cracked, guilt already eating him alive. Dad shoved past us, heading for the backyard, shouting at Mom to call 911. The panic in his voice made my stomach twist. Jake sank to the floor, his hands in his hair. "I didn't know it would spread so fast." "The wind, you idiot. It's dry as bone out there." I barked at him, but deep down, I already knew yelling wasn't going to fix anything. Mom was on the phone, crying, trying to explain. I caught pieces. "The fire's moving fast. We're at the foot of Ridgeview Hill. Please, send help." Max pawed at the door, whimpering. I grabbed his collar, holding him back. If he ran outside, we'd lose him. Through the front window, I could see the fire now, closer than it had any right to be. I could feel the heat radiating even through the glass. "We need to get everyone out," Dad shouted, running back inside. "If it jumps the creek, we're screwed." We all knew he was right. That creek was narrow. It wouldn't hold the fire back for long. Without thinking, I snatched up my phone and started calling neighbors. Some answered, some didn't. I left frantic voicemails. "Fire's coming. You have to leave now." Jake sat frozen. Useless. I had no patience for him now. "Get up," I snapped, grabbing his arm and hauling him to his feet. "We're going." We piled into Dad's truck. Max jumped into the back seat, whining low in his throat. The heat was brutal now, even with the windows up. The air reeked of burning pine and something uglier. Plastic, maybe. Houses. We drove up the winding mountain road, honking the horn, pounding on doors, shouting. Lights came on. People staggered out, still in pajamas, clutching kids and pets and whatever they could grab. At the Miller's place, old Mr. Miller refused to leave. "I've lived here 70 years, he rasped. "I'm not running now." Dad tried arguing. I tried begging. Nothing worked. "If the fire crosses that creek," I told him, "you won't have a chance." He just shook his head, stubborn as a mule. We had to leave him. Felt like abandoning a soldier on a battlefield. The sky was a hellish red by now. Ash rained down like snow. Every breath burned my lungs. Still no sirens. "Where are they?" Jake whispered from the back seat, sounding like a scared little kid. "Town's 30 minutes away," Dad said grimly. "They won't make it in time." He pulled over suddenly. Up ahead, a tree had fallen across the road, blocking the way. "That's it," Dad said. "We have to turn back." I looked at the fire line, so close now it looked like a wall of liquid gold and black. There was no turning back. There was no safe road out. "We head down the service trail," I said. "Behind the storage barn." Dad hesitated. It was rough terrain, barely drivable even in daylight. But there was no other way. "Hold on," he said, gripping the wheel tight. The truck bucked and bounced down the narrow dirt trail. Branches scraped the sides. Rocks clattered under the tires. I kept my eyes glued to the tree lean, watching for flare-ups. A fox darted across the trail ahead of us, so close I could see the panic in its eyes. "The animals," Jake whispered. "They're trapped too." Something twisted inside me. I wasn't thinking about it before, just people. But the forest was alive with creatures that had nowhere to run. The truck jolted hard. I braced myself against the dashboard. "If we make it out," I said out loud, not even sure who I was talking to. "I'm going back." Jake stared at me. "Back where?" "Back into the woods," I said, "to get as many out as I can." He opened his mouth, probably to argue, but he shut it again when he saw my face. We made it to the edge of town. Sirens were blaring now, lights flashing. Fire trucks, ambulances, police cruisers, all too late. Dad pulled over. We tumbled out, coughing and shaking. Mom was crying openly now, clutching Max to her chest. I looked back. The mountains were a furnace, and somewhere in that inferno dozens, maybe hundreds, of lives were about to be snuffed out. "I'm going," I said again. Jake caught my arm. "You can't." "I can. And I would. Because somebody had to clean up this mess. Because somebody had to try." The smoke was thicker when I made it back toward the woods. I tied a wet bandana around my mouth and nose, my eyes already burning. Max wanted to come with me, but I ordered him to stay back with Mom. This was no place for a house dog. I had no real plan, just a gut feeling that if I didn't move fast, everything would die. The ground crackled under my boots as I sprinted across the open field. I ducked low, weaving between trees, scanning the undergrowth for any sign of life. Everything smelled like scorched earth. Then I saw it. A tiny nest, half hidden in a bush, for speckled eggs, no bigger than marbles, trembling on brittle twigs. I hesitated. Eggs. They couldn't run, couldn't even scream. I grabbed the nest carefully, cradling it in one hand like something sacred. I couldn't save the whole forest, but I could save these. I tucked the nest inside my jacket and kept moving. Further down the trail, near the bend where the old logging road started, I spotted movement. A flash of red fur. A fox kit, probably no more than a few months old, sat frozen by the side of the road, shivering violently. Its ears were flattened back, tail wrapped tight around its body. I crouched slowly, murmuring low, nonsense words, anything to sound less terrifying. "Hey, little guy, it's okay. Come on." The kit didn't move, didn't even blink, probably paralyzed by fear. I edged closer, heart pounding. My jacket was already full with the nest. I shrugged it off one arm and held it out like a net. The kit didn't resist when I scooped him up. He just whimpered, barely audible over the roar of the fire. I stuffed the jacket back around both the nest and the kit, tucking them against my chest. "Hang in there," I whispered, not sure who I was talking to anymore. I turned to head back to town and almost ran straight into a man. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing an old forest ranger jacket that had seen better days. His face was grimy with soot, his hair wild from the heat. He stared at me, then down at the jacket squirming against my chest. "You're out here alone?" he demanded. "Yeah," I gasped, trying to get the animals out. He grunted, not exactly approval but not disapproval either. "Name's Tom," he said shortly. "I'm with the service, or what's left of it." "I'm Luke," I answered. "I live down Ridgeview." He nodded, quick and sharp. "You got a car?" "Back near town." Tom wiped his forehead, leaving a streak of black across his skin. "Good. We can't save everything, but we save what we can. Follow me." We moved together now, two shadows against the inferno. Tom was faster than me, more methodical. He had a thick canvas bag slung over his shoulder, full of something that clinked when he moved. "What's in there?" I asked between gasps. "Cages, traps, emergency gear." "You planned for this?" He snorted. "Been planning for 20 years. We made our way toward a section of forest where the smoke thinned slightly. Birds shrieked overhead, fleeing in every direction. Tom pointed to a patch of brambles near a fallen tree. "Boar piglet. Hear it?" I strained. A soft, high-pitched squeal, nearly drowned by the crackling fire. Tom crouched low, cutting a path through the thorns with a machete. I followed, heart hammering. The little boar was tangled in the underbrush, its legs stuck. Its tiny sides heaved in terror. "I'll hold it," Tom said. "You free its legs." I didn't argue. I dropped to my knees, ignoring the pain as rocks and thorns bit into my skin. The piglet squealed louder as I worked. I murmured soft words, my fingers fumbling with the thorns. Finally, with a rough tug, I freed its back leg. Kicked, panicked, but Tom held it firm. We wrapped it in one of Tom's spare canvas bags, leaving room for it to breathe. 3 lives, Tom said, nodding at my bundle and the piglet. "Not bad for a night's work." We staggered back toward the trail, sweat soaking our clothes. The smoke thickened again. My chest burned. Every step felt like dragging 100 pounds. Tom pointed ahead. "Service sheds a 1/4 mile. There's a truck. We'll load them up there." I nodded, teeth clenched. Halfway there, I stumbled. My foot caught on a root hidden under the ash. I crashed to my knees, nearly dropping the nest. Tom hauled me up one-handed. "No time for breaks, kid." I coughed hard, my vision swimming. "I know," I rasped. I know. We pushed on, each step heavier than the last. When we finally saw the shed, it looked like a miracle. A battered old pickup, keys still dangling from the ignition. We loaded the animals carefully. Tom drove. I sat in the passenger seat, clutching the jacket tight against me. As we bounced down the dirt road, I turned to look back. The forest behind us was a sea of flame. I didn't know how much we'd saved, but it was better than nothing. And we weren't done yet. When we reached town, the fire trucks were finally in full force. Volunteers poured buckets of water over smoking roofs, and neighbors worked side by side, faces grim. I barely slowed down. Tom peeled off toward the animal shelter with the rescued ones. I was already thinking about getting back. That's when Jake found me. He looked terrible, smeared with soot, red-eyed, limping slightly. "I want to help," he said, chest heaving. I stared at him, rage flaring so hot it almost drowned the exhaustion. "You've helped enough," I snapped. His face crumpled like a kicked dog, but he didn't back down. "Please, Luke, I have to." Some part of me wanted to shove him aside, leave him to wallow in the mess he'd made. But another part, the part that remembered us building forts together in the woods when we were kids, hesitated. "Fine," I said through gritted teeth. "Stay close. Do exactly what I say." He nodded quickly, too eager. We grabbed a pair of old canvas bags from the firehouse, stuffed them with whatever we could, water bottles, first aid kits, some heavy gloves. The fire hadn't reached the far end of the valley yet. That's where I aimed us now. We moved fast, weaving through side trails and abandoned fields. Jake kept tripping, cursing under his breath. I had to pull him up twice. "Stay sharp," I barked. "I'm trying," he panted. Near a dry creek bed, we heard it. A ragged, broken bleating. We followed the sound, hearts hammering. And there she was, an Olin doe, one leg twisted grotesquely under her, eyes wide with terror. I froze. Saving small animals was one thing. This was different. She was bigger than both of us put together, and if she panicked, she could kill herself or us. "What do we do?" Jake whispered. I looked at him, and for once he didn't look like a dumb kid. He looked scared, but steady. "We get her out," I said. Together. We crept closer. Every move had to be slow, deliberate. I talked in a low voice. Not words really, just sound, trying to keep her calm. Jake circled to the other side, his hands shaking. "We need to lift her," I said. "You get under her chest. I'll get her back legs." He nodded, face pale. We moved in. The doe flinched but didn't bolt. Maybe she knew she couldn't. I slid my arms under her haunches. Jake struggled to get a grip beneath her ribs. "On three," I hissed. "1, 2, 3. We heaved. The doe bleated again, a low, miserable sound, but she didn't thrash. We stumbled back with her, a few feet at a time, dragging her clear of the collapsed bank. My arms shook from the strain. Jake's face was red with effort. Finally, we got her onto firmer ground. She tried to stand, wobbling pitifully. Jake stripped off his hoodie and tied it into a makeshift sling. We fashioned a crude support for her leg. She wouldn't survive long without real help. But she had a chance now. We stood panting over her, soot and sweat dripping from our faces. Jake looked at me, waiting for judgment. I didn't say anything. I just clapped him hard on the shoulder. He flinched, then smiled. A small, shaky thing. "Thanks," he mumbled. "Don't thank me," I said roughly. "Thank her." We moved the doe carefully toward a clearing where Tom had said animal rescue teams would be staging. Took nearly an hour. Jake stumbled twice. I cursed at him both times. He didn't snap back. He just kept going. By the time we reached the clearing, the sun was a dim red ball sinking behind smoke-blackened trees. Paramedics waved us over. They took the doe, loading her onto a stretcher improvised from 2 long boards. One of them, a woman with a braid and a tired smile, squeezed my arm. "Good work," she said simply. Jake beamed. We found a patch of grass and collapsed there. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Finally, Jake said, voice rough, "I never wanted any of this." "I know," I said, staring up at the bruised sky. I thought it was harmless." I closed my eyes, breathing in the acrid air. "Harmless doesn't exist," I said. "Not out here." He was silent, and I knew he understood. That night, under a sky still flickering with embers, we slept side by side on the hard ground. No tents, no pillows, just exhaustion and the brittle remains of something bigger than either of us. I dreamed of when we were kids. building tree houses, daring each other to jump into the river, promising that no matter what happened, we'd have each other's backs. Promises are easy when you're 10 years old. Keeping them when the world is burning, that's the real test. The morning came choked with smoke. Ash covered the ground like snow, and the sun was a sickly orange smear above the mountains. The air was thicker, hotter. Something had changed, and not for the better. Tom found us as we stumbled back toward the main trail. "Winds shifted," he said without preamble. "Fire's cutting us off." I didn't need to ask what that meant. I could feel it, the way the heat pressed from the wrong direction now, the way the smoke funneled through the canyons. "We have to move," Tom said. "Now." Jake looked around, panicked. "Which way?" Tom pointed north. "There's an old firebreak near Miller's Ridge. It's rough, but it might hold long enough." We started running. No plan, just instinct. Around a bend in the trail, we found a small farmhouse half swallowed by smoke. The yard was empty. No cars, no people. But barking echoed from inside the house. Jake froze. "Dogs." I looked at Tom. He hesitated a split second, then nodded. "Get them." Jake and I sprinted to the porch. The door was half open, smoke curling out. Inside it was worse, a gray, choking haze. 2 dogs, small mutts, cowered by the couch, barking frantically. I rushed forward, coughing hard, grabbed one under each arm. Jake held the door open as I staggered back out. We piled the dogs into a crate Tom had in the back of the truck. "Go!" Tom barked. We barely made it 200 yards before we heard it, the roar of the fire getting louder, like a freight train bearing down. "Split up," Tom shouted. "We cover more ground. Meet at the firebreak." Without waiting, he veered left, disappearing into the smoke. Jake stuck close to me. I scanned the roadside, looking for anything alive. Near a fence, I spotted movement. A pair of cats, tangled together in fear. "There!" I yelled. Jake ran forward. He grabbed one cat, hissing and clawing. I got the other. They scratched and fought, but we bundled them into a sack, tying it loosely so they could breathe. We ran again, lungs burning. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught a glimpse. A rabbit, its fur blackened, limping toward a hollow stump. "I'll get it," Jake cried. I nodded, waving him on. I veered toward a collapsed shed, where a terrified goat bleated from inside the wreckage. The heat was unbearable now. Sweat poured down my back. Every breath felt like inhaling fire. I kicked at the debris, yanking boards aside. The goat bolted out, nearly knocking me over. I let it go, better it run free than burn trapped. When I turned back toward the trail, a wall of smoke slammed into me. I coughed violently, dropping to my knees. My eyes streamed. I couldn't see, couldn't breathe. Panic surged, cold and choking. I stumbled blindly, hands outstretched. Shapes loomed and vanished. The fire's roar drowned out everything. Then a hand grabbed my arm, yanking me backward. Tom's voice, rough and urgent. "Move!" He half dragged, half carried me through the smoke. I barely registered where we were going. Finally, the air thinned a little. We collapsed behind a boulder, gasping. Tom shoved a water bottle into my hands. "Drink." I gulped greedily, coughing and choking. "Where's Jake?" I rasped. Tom's face tightened. "He's smart. He'll find the firebreak." I wanted to believe that. We got moving again, slower now. Near the firebreak, we found Jake. He'd made it, cradling the rabbit in his hoodie like a baby. I almost collapsed in relief. But not everything made it. Lying near the edge of the clearing was a small body, one of the kittens we'd missed. Jake saw it too. His face crumpled. He dropped to his knees, gently stroking the soot-blackened fur. "I'm sorry," he whispered. I knelt beside him, swallowing the lump in my throat. Tom crouched down too, bowing his head for a moment. We couldn't save them all. That's the thing no one tells you about disasters. No matter how fast you run, how hard you fight, there's always something you have to leave behind. We buried the kitten there, in the ash-choked soil, marking the spot with a flat stone. No words, just silence. The fire crackled in the distance, still alive, still hungry. But for now, we had a small patch of ground and a little breathing room, and sometimes that's enough. The fire didn't end with a bang. It ended with a slow, stubborn crawl, clawing at the earth until it had nothing left to eat. When the last flames guttered out, a heavy silence settled over the valley. No birdsong, no rustle of deer in the underbrush, Just the crackle of cooling ash and the groan of trees collapsing under their own scorched weight. Our house stood barely, blackened, smoke-damaged, but standing. Others weren't so lucky. Neighbors gathered in the ruined streets, faces hollow. Nobody looked at us. They knew. Word traveled fast up here, faster than fire sometimes. Mom cried every night. Dad stopped talking altogether. Jake walked around like a ghost, flinching whenever someone slammed a door or raised a voice. It didn't take long for the cold shoulders to turn into glares, then into whispers, then into outright shouting. Murderers! They burned us out. Get out before we throw you out. We packed what little we had left and left town 3 days later. No goodbyes. We found a rental 2 towns over, a sagging place on the edge of nowhere. But at least there were no torches, no pitchforks. Jake didn't come out of his room for 2 weeks. One morning, I found him sitting at the kitchen table, a stack of papers in front of him. Applications. Volunteer forms. I'm joining, he said, voice flat. Joining what? Rescue team. Animal rehab center in Ridgeway. They're rebuilding after the fire. I stared at him. There were bags under his eyes and he'd lost weight. But for the first time, he looked steady. They'll hate you, I said quietly. I don't care, he said. I have to fix what I can. He left that afternoon, a backpack slung over his shoulder. I didn't stop him. In the weeks that followed, I kept busy. The town needed volunteers to clear debris, build shelters, rebuild fences. I signed up for every job. Tom found me one day while I was hammering boards onto a makeshift barn. Got a proposition for you, he said. I wiped sweat from my forehead. Yeah, that old farm outside Ridgeline? The owners are gone. Moved south. They left the place to the city. I nodded, unsure where he was going. They're looking for someone to manage it, turn it into a wildlife sanctuary. I stared at him, heartbeat quickening. Why me? He grinned, a slow, tired thing. Because you're too damn stubborn to quit. 3 days later, I stood at the gates of the old farm. It wasn't much. A few crumbling outbuildings. A big barn with holes in the roof. Acres of blackened earth trying to remember how to be green again. But it was mine, or as close as anything could be. I threw myself into it. Fencing, water tanks, feed stores, shelter runs. Some of the animals we'd rescued during the fire ended up here. The boar piglet, who'd grown into a grumpy, tusky teenager. A couple of goats. Half a dozen cats with singed whiskers and missing ears. They weren't pretty. They weren't perfect. But they were alive. One evening, about a month after moving in, I was fixing a broken water line near the barn. I heard a rustle behind me. I turned, expecting one of the goats. Instead, I saw her, the fox Kit, the one I'd bundled in my jacket that first terrible night. She stood at the edge of the clearing, cautious but curious, her red coat vibrant against the gray dirt. My heart stopped. She took a few hesitant steps forward, nose twitching. I dropped to my knees, staying still. Slowly, carefully, she crept closer. When she was just a few feet away, she sat down, wrapping her tail neatly around her paws, and looked at me. No fear, just trust. I didn't move, didn't breathe. She stayed there for a long moment. Then she stood, gave a little yip, and trotted off into the twilight. I sat there for a long time after she disappeared, feeling something shift inside me. Not forgiveness, not forgetting, but something close to peace. Jake visited sometimes. He always brought stories. Rescued owls, bandaged deer, once even a bear cub with burnt paws. We didn't talk about the fire much. There were things too big for words. But we worked side by side, mending fences, hauling feed, cleaning out stalls, building something new out of the ashes. Sometimes, late at night, when the wind was just right, I thought I could still smell smoke on the air. It never really goes away. Neither does guilt. Or hope. Maybe that's the price we pay for being human. Maybe you can't ever really fix everything you break. But you can try. And sometimes, even when the world burns down around you, you find something worth saving in the ruins. Sometimes you find yourself,